Okay, so this week's golf course review is of Omni Bedford Springs in Bedford, Pennsylvania. Bedford Springs is a small town just south of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, I-76, and it's just southeast of Johnstown, south of Somerset. So for people coming up from Maryland, you basically take 70 up to 76, and it takes 76. I think it's the second, maybe exit. It's no more than 20 miles west on 76, or you can go up 222 from Cumberland, and it's about 30 miles to the northeast from there. So once you get that far up, you go Hagerstown up 270 to Hagerstown, and that's where I-81 comes up from Western Virginia. And also, I guess you can take 522 out to West Virginia. But the basic issue is that it is not far from Cumberland, it's not far from Hagerstown, less than 50 miles from either one. And it's also not far from Rocky Gap. It's not very far from Maryland National or Musket Ridge or a number of other courses in the area that are more DC / Frederick courses, Frederick courses. Not Fredericksburg, but Frederick courses. And I'm sure that a lot of people who have the pleasure of listening to this review of Omni Bedford Springs know quite a bit about a lot of the good courses along between Hagerstown, certainly around Cumberland, and in Frederick. So how does this course compare to those courses? And I guess Oakmont is not far away from there either. So the thing about it, or is Oakmont more towards the east? I think it's more towards the east along the I-80 corridor up into eastern Pennsylvania, more central eastern Pennsylvania. But anyway, so I will just say this, I guess, when it comes to that topic, there are a lot of decent golf courses between DC and Omni Bedford Springs. However, Omni Bedford Springs is still a decent course to play, and on top of that, it is at the Omni Bedford Springs Resort, which is sort of a throwback to a 50s style resort. It's a nice big resort. I'm sure you've seen the pictures of this resort by now, which is one of those valley hideaways in the southern Pennsylvania valleys. It's near Blue Knob? Yeah, Blue Knob Ski Resort, but not quite that far north. And in general, it's just a decent place to go to in the spring and summer. It's cooler, normally than most of the Potomac Basin to the southeast. And it's a good drive. It's a good drive out in the country. It's a kind of a decent small Pennsylvania town. We see a lot of towns like this in Pennsylvania. Lancaster would be on a larger scale, and this is more towards the smaller scale. Bedford Springs more towards the smaller scale. But the course itself is, I would say, rather tame. But at the same time, it's certainly tame compared to Rocky Gap, absolutely tame, and Maryland National and some of these other courses. But at the same time, it is a good basic golf course. The real strength of this course is that it is a more or less flat course that still has some verticality. It's a decently long course. It's not very long or very short. It's more like 6,500 yards from the back tees. It has some water, some creeks, some wastes, and some interesting shots that are a decent shot off the tee or to the green. But it isn't a very complicated or very difficult course. I'd say it's more like a 127 course from the back tees, maybe a 130 at the most. It's not a pushover course, but it's not very hard either. And even playing it in middle of March, the course was in decent condition. Greens were in decent condition. And the day I got out there, started off in the 40s. It was a clear day in the 40s, and the temperatures got up to about 56, 57 degrees. Enough for jackets to come off, but not enough for it to get hot out there. And while the course is a good layout, it actually was in pretty well-maintained condition. I mean, surprisingly well-maintained condition for that time of year. It does not have, I would say, the world's greatest layout. It's a straightforward course where you don't have a lot of trees on the course, and it's pretty open, and it's sort of a bowl kind of thing where it's like maybe a U shape on the sides. There's a slope, and on the center it's kind of flat, but on the sides there's a gentle 20-degree slope, for instance. There's a road going on the left, and then you go on the first hole, you go out to about the 9th hole, and then it sort of makes a quick U-turn and makes another hole out to the 10th, and then comes back. And then you go back to about the middle of the course, or you get to the 14th hole. Then it makes a sharp left, goes way to the, I guess, the north side, where if you'd start on the number 1, it'd be out to the right, and then it goes across a fairly decent sized creek, and then it makes a left to go 1 hole, and comes back, turns around, and goes the other way alongside a row of houses, and then makes another U-turn and comes back to the 17th green, which is a par 3. It makes a complete 180 and goes to the 18th and back to the clubhouse. So you really don't get a opportunity to stop at the clubhouse unless you just stop your round in the middle of like the 9th hole, 10th hole, drive all the way back down the length of the course and go to the clubhouse. And at the time I played the course, the nice restaurant they had in the clubhouse was not open. It hadn't been open for a while due to COVID. So I ended up going inside the main resort part to a Starbucks kind of place that had really nice sandwiches. It was a coffee shop that had really nice sandwiches. And I got a nice chicken salad sandwich, which was surprisingly good, and a coffee. Got that, came back out, went back to the 10th hole. And the 10th hole is one of the few unfortunate holes on the course where there is a house right behind the green. I mean, you're playing that, over this big valley. It's a pretty steep valley that comes back up, and then there's a house, 30 feet behind the green. So other than that, the only houses that are on the course are, I would say, the fairway for 16 and 17. No, 15 and 16. 17 is a par 3 that comes back from the green at 16, and 18 goes back towards the clubhouse. So for 15, 16, and number 10, those are the only holes where you really have a house right near the course. And then there's 1 or 2 holes on the back, like number 13, which there's a house across the road. The next hole also has a house across the road. So for maybe five holes out of the course, out of 18, there's a house like right there while you're trying to play. But for the rest of the course, it's actually pretty nice. It's a nice kind of laid back, mostly flat, though not entirely flat. There are a couple of surprises out there on the course. But a decent, good challenge course without a lot of tree covers, but still with some trees. It's not like just a wide open fairway with no trees at all. But there still is plenty of room to hit to adjacent fairways if you get a little bit offline. There's still some water out there that you can play. There's creeks that cross the fairway, and there's a decent amount of fairway grass, decent amount of rough. The waist is cut down as usual for most courses this time of year, but I could definitely see the waist getting to be longer. Wouldn't have to be a lot longer, and it would be pretty much you're not going to go out there and find a ball. This course does have some teeth to it, but it's not very dangerous of a course. So it's a pretty casual course for the most part. Not too long, not too vertical, not too flat, not too boring, not too easy, not too hard. Nice middle of the road course. a good chance to get out and play golf, while you're at the resort. And fairly, I would say it is a modest layout that works well if you're an 80s, 90 player. It's not going to be easy to play this course, but it's not super challenging either. It's also a good opportunity to get out and hit 3 woods and stuff like that without too much trouble. There's a fair amount of room off the fairway line. There's some recovery along the side of the fairway, but there's also some peril along the sides of the fairway also. So, you do get a chance to play really long clubs, but at the same time, it's not like a gimme. You can just hit it anywhere out there and go find it and play it. So I thought it was a fun course to play, although rather tame. I thought it was a decent challenge of golf, though rather tame. And I enjoyed the round. I enjoyed the drive up there. It wasn't really a very complicated drive up there. I mean, 99.9% of the course of the drive up there is highway. Whether you've got 66 up 81 and then out 70, whether you're crazy and you go up 270 and out 70 past Hagerstown, it's almost all highway. Once you get on the highway somewhere, whether it's 95 or 495 or 66, you're pretty much going to be on the highway until you get to Bedford Springs. So none of this back street kind of thing where you're going through stoplight after stoplight or waiting for traffic or something like that. It's a very simple drive up there. The only problem is it's 3 hours from DC, and it will require a fair amount of highway driving. If you like highway driving, that's fine. If you don't, maybe you'll get a little bored with it, but it's still an easy course to get to and a fairly easy course to play, and just not too much trouble, but at the same time, worth the trip. I really thought it was worth the 3 hours to drive up there and play it, but I can't say that I would have thought the same thing if I had a choice between playing Whiskey Creek or playing this course, considering Whiskey Creek is only an hour, maybe an hour and a half out of DC, and this course is 3 hours out of DC. I don't really think that this course would compare with Whiskey Creek in terms of entertainment, but it certainly was half the price, $35 with a cart, fairly wide open, fairly quiet, decently quiet course, decently entertaining. I doubt that anyone who goes the extra 100 miles to play this course over a course like Whiskey Creek or something that's right in the area, or Little Bennett, is really going to regret the extra drive. But what I do think is they might not be completely happy with the course as an outing. So I will give it a B as a outing of golf and a B as a day trip, let's say, because it's going to take 6 hours to drive out there and back, plus the 4 hours to play the round. So it's going to be like, you start at 8 o'clock in the morning, you get there at 11:30, you play golf until 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you drive back, you get back to DC at 8 o'clock that night. So it's going to be a solid 12-hour kind of thing. But it is a good place to play. For a trip or two, it's fine. It's great. If you want to avoid the crowds at some of the other bigger name golf courses, this would be a good alternative to try. It's not far from Hagerstown. It's maybe an hour away from Frederick. Maybe an hour and a half away from Frederick. Winchester, likewise, an hour and a half. The problem is getting to Frederick or getting to Winchester, getting to Hagerstown and going from there. No question, it is 3 hours versus an hour or an hour and a half to play a more closer to one of the major DC metro areas. Especially if you're talking about playing a course along 66, it is definitely a 2-hour drive out to this course from there. So to me, this course is the kind of course that I would try to play in the summer or the early fall when you're looking at a 5 or 6 hour round, if you can get on a local DC course. Then a course like this starts to make a lot more sense. It's also a good practice round. I think also it's just that, if you can get on a better course without a trouble, and you can play on a day when it's not going to be packed. It's hard to say that it's worth going all the way out there to play this course versus playing something like that. But there's always pluses and minuses, gives and takes when it comes to golf. When you're stuck at looking at a course like Haynes Point, for instance, this course definitely it's a very good comparison to Haynes Point, for instance. Okay, it's a better course than Haynes Point. It's nowhere near as crowded as Haynes Point or as noisy as Haynes Point is. It doesn't quite have the visuals along the river like Haynes Point does, but it's just a much more interesting and challenging course than Haynes Point is. But it's still the same kind of out straight and then come back that Haynes Point is, except that it's not 2 outs and ins, it's 1 out and 1 back in. So I would definitely much rather play this course than Haynes Point, but Haynes Point is right downtown. And so you're trading convenience versus a more interesting round of golf. Haynes Point also has gotten to be very expensive, especially in the season when everybody and their mother wants to go down there and play. It's gotten up to $40, $50, even on Fridays, and $60 on the weekends. I don't think that this course is going to be that expensive, except in the dead of summer, at the very high point of the season. Although it might be. I mean, I got the winter rate. I'm sure that $35 was the winter rate. So, yeah, when you want to do something different than play one of the many DC area courses that you've already played 10, 15 times, and you're willing to try something different that's not hard to get to, that's not a bad location, it has very good amenities, and you can, in fact, you could even consider staying there at the resort for the weekend and playing around. Although I don't think it's a top-notch hotel type course. I've played many hotel courses, usually Hilton's or something that have a golf course right there, and they are almost always better courses than this. The comparison just doesn't quite fly in that regard. But for what it is, for a sort of rural, semi-rural type hotel, small town golf course that's casual yet decent amenities, very nice amenities, and not too far of a drive, not way out in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, not Pittsburgh, okay, not Ohio, nothing like that, not up by Lake Superior or whatever it is, Lake Erie, I guess. It's not all the way across the state. It's not way up by New Jersey. It's just technically no more than 20 miles across the border from Maryland. It's pretty decent. For that, it's not bad at all. That's Omni Bedford Springs Hotel Golf Resort in Bedford, Pennsylvania.